art my portion, O Lord. I have said that I would keep thy words. I entreated thy favor with my whole heart. Be merciful unto me according to thy word. I thought on my ways and turned my feet to thy testimonies. I made haste and delayed not to keep thy commandments. The bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto. Good morning, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing in the Psalms. In Psalm 35. Remember, this was an, as they call, an imprecatory, or imprecatory? Whatever, it means to bring down curse on someone. But as we were talking, Jesus himself said, do good to your enemy, for in so doing you will heap coals of fire upon his head. And it addresses a sort of I don't know if I'd call it a paradox, but it's a sort of a paradoxical fact of life that, good medicine sometimes tastes bad, and so sometimes what we need, doesn't necessarily make us feel good. You know what I mean? Like, we don't necessarily feel good about the things that happens that may be for our, in our best interest and for our good. And so people have a adverse reaction sometimes to things that are actually good for them. And so it can feel like coals of fire being heaped on your head, especially, I guess the classic thought is that, like, you have an enemy, and when they're playing the part of an enemy, so what I mean is when someone is an enemy, but they're actually doing things to you that an enemy does. Because sometimes people have enemies, but they're just, it's an innocuous relationship, but you're not talking about a real enemy. Like someone who would dig a pit for you, Like it said, they dig the pit and put a net in it and let them fall into their own very destruction that they had provided for me. And often, if someone is playing the part of an enemy and then you respond with love, it can be a very annoying experience for them because they perhaps want you to respond in anger. And on some level, you're not giving them what they want. Because what they want is a fight, maybe. And so doing good to them can cause irritation. It can cause their conscience to begin to burn. I always think of that in terms of conscience, because suddenly it's hard to do evil to someone that does good to you. At least it is, for a normal human being with a conscience. And it's infuriating sometimes when you're treating someone like an enemy if they treat you like a friend. Nevertheless, there are oftentimes things that are less, that situation sounds all nice in fairy tale land, like as far as it does, we recognize that kind of doing good to someone who hates you, how it can effectively neutralize them. But there's also the fact that I could pray to them. I could pray to God on their behalf. And sometimes that can mean the Lord, works things so that their attempts to harm me are frustrated. But this can also be good for them, except for in the ultimate case where, where they're, like, let's say, killed. Someone's killed, and then that, that's the end of their life. So, I don't know how much good you could say was done for them in that. But at the extreme, the enemies of God's people God does not, let ultimately get away. And so if they are not converted into allies and friends, they will be destroyed as enemies. And so moderate chastisement can do an enemy a world of good. It's not necessarily, obviously an enemy is not likely to take your chastisement. But when they see something coming from God, like they fall into the very pit that they digged for you, they fall into it themselves. Not all people are going to immediately recognize, that as being of God. They just think, oh, bad luck. But still, it has a potential. Especially the more it happens, the more coincidentally things work against them. Like the Lord Jesus said to Paul, it is hard for you to kick against the pricks. And you're going against the flow. But you see, even there, he ultimately had to be confronted by the Lord Jesus himself. But even in the midst of that, what did he do? He struck him blind. If I'm being struck blind at the moment, I'm not thinking this is any sort of good thing that's happened to me. But that's how he called him, by taking away his sight. Verse 9, and my soul shall be joyful in the Lord. It shall rejoice in his salvation. However, God saves. Here, by causing the enemy to fall into the pit that he had made. The Lord works salvation by making the enemy fall into his own trap. All my bones shall say, Lord, who is like unto thee, which deliverest the poor from him that is too strong for him. Do I have to say, that the Bible contains metaphors? And things that are not to be taken literally, such as my bones shall say, metaphorically speaking. And, that's a figure of speech called personification, where you give a non-living thing, or, sometimes when you put, actually, this may not be personification really so much as you put a part for the whole. And so, in the figure of speech, it says, my bones, I feel it down in my bones. And it's like, but, that means the very fiber of the structure of my being, my bones, the hard things on which I am constructed, the rocks on which my own physical house is founded are my bones. They are like rocks, as far as, a relative, not quite as much as teeth, but still, in the sense of the human body, they are the founding principle, the founding, strata is your bones. All the body is built on the structure and framework of the bones. And we're saying just down at the structure of who I am, my body, it's going to speak from the very depths of who I am. Who is like unto thee, which delivers the poor from him that is too strong for him? Ye the poor and the needy from him that spoileth him. It takes strength to deliver the poor and the needy from the rich who have, let's say, the malevolent rich. The malevolent rich are the ones, of course, that are always fleecing the poor and trying to get more and more out of the poor. It's not just someone making a product and getting wealthy off of it. There are whole industries set up to spoil the poor. And in some ways, when you get into politics, money talks. The Supreme Court even says that, money is speech. I don't even know how you get around that, too, because it is important to be able to, if you want to have your voice heard, you should be able to buy time on television through advertising or whatever. But then you think about it, if I have something I want to say, how do I get my voice heard? But I still don't think that means that you should prevent other people from having their voices heard if they have the money. But the thing is, when they have money, they lobby Congress. They get the rules all made up so that it benefits them. There's this thing in government called regulatory capture, which means that the government bodies that are meant to regulate certain industries and businesses. Let's say you have a carpentry union or whatever. I mean, that's not business, but it's similar because it's a union. But any business, the necktie, United Necktie Manufacturers. I'm just making this up, but it just seemed like a good thing. You have a bunch of manufacturers of neckties. They're all the big necktie manufacturers. And this is kind of a joke, And they decide, hey, there's the necktie regulation board the government set up, and they're making life hard for us because they're putting rules and restrictions on how we have to make the tie, or actually maybe not even that. They just put some sort of rules and regulations. I don't know. I don't want to take the analogy so far where I got to construct the whole world around the idea of a necktie manufacturing company. We have a necktie manufacturing company. And so they go to the board that regulates necktie manufacture, and they say, we've got a lot of money here. They lobby the board, and they convince them to make rules to make it harder for smaller necktie manufacturers. These are all the big ones. For the smaller ones, not part of their little conglomerate, to make it harder. So they put rules on the kind of fabrics that must be used and the number of inspections that must be done. And this is how big businesses make it harder for little businesses to operate all the time. They go to the regulatory bodies, and they make it harder and harder for little guys to be able to survive because, it's just like with taxes. I mean, when I first started my partnership a couple of years ago, and I had to do partnership taxes. I mean, I was just days of like research and reading. I'm like, what's this mean? What's that mean? I'm like, only to find out that most of the stuff I was trying to figure out was like just areas that you leave blank because it has something to do with some other, because partnerships cover such a broad array of business interests. There's different kinds of, they have oil and gas partnerships and stuff like that. And it gets complicated because they specifically mention oil and gas and farm and all that other stuff. And depending on what kind of business you're in, they treat you differently. And just for an average person, sorting through all that tax information is a nightmare. It takes hours and hours of your time. And the cool thing is, once I understood that, then I just take the original tax return and use that as like make sure nothing's changed on the new ones as far as the way they want it filled out. And so every after it's not as bad because I kind of know all that I need to fill out. Right? But the wicked will use their power and their money, because money is speech. It's also power, because the power to be able to be heard, have your voice heard, to amplify your voice. And it's no secret that some people, once they get money, they use that money to, secure themselves. And it's not necessarily because they don't want other people to be rich. It's just that lest it be at their expense in any way, shape, or form, or through fear of it being at their expense. And so, the poor are always facing an uphill battle against interests that are richer than they are. And this is something that comes out in the Bible all the time. And it goes down to the present day. That's why people get angry about wealth inequality. It's because wealth grants people who possess it greater power, the potential to, to have a voice. But the thing is, it's a problem, but it's like the solution is not to take the voice away from everyone or let's make everyone poor. Well, you protect the poor from the excesses of the rich with good laws that make sense. But you don't use the law to protect the rich from the poor. But that's to a great deal. To a great extent, a lot of the, when people talk about regulations and stuff in government, like that's the kind of thing that happens, is that businesses capture the regulating bodies mean the bodies that regulate the very industry that they're part of. They may get former executives on the board. We regulate the airline industry, and it's all ex-airline executives. And a lot of when you deregulate businesses, oftentimes it makes it easier for new businesses to start because regulations do that. And they make it so only big interests, in this partnership between the big interests and the big money and the government has a very negative impact overall, I think, especially because where it stifles innovation as such through using where they use the regulations in a way that they weren't intended, which is basically to kind of shut people out. And it's dirty, and it happens, and it's like, what is there to do about it? The Lord preserves us, and plus, let me put it this way. The things I'm talking about in the modern age pale in comparison to in the ancient world, where, at least in the modern world, there's a danger that average people, poor people, if they wise up at times, they can use their numbers to vote in countries that have free elections for different leaders. Hopefully that will look after the interests of all the people and the right in a righteous way. But we have that option. But like in the time of the Jews, you're talking about there's a king, and nobody can say anything. Who can touch the king? Not the poor. They've got it. So the king is supposed to look out for the poor. That's part of what the duty of being a king is like you're responsible to your people. But oftentimes they did not. It's no different than today. But at least today we have a little more potential to redress grievances. So the grievances are not as great. Because, and plus when they were greater, even in our country, in the past, people fought, to make it better. But still, there are powerful interests which are just dwarf us and can still greatly impact our lives and even hurt us. And also, they use, even with the most recent thing with the pandemic and all the bailouts and all the money that went where poof, who knows. Money went over all the place. But the money didn't exist prior to the day they sent it out. They made it up. And, we're all rich and we want to preserve our prosperity. But our posterity, those who come after us, are the ones who are going to have to pay for it ultimately, eventually. Eventually the bills come due. We keep overspending to prop up our exorbitant lifestyle, and to pay for all the things we do with our government. Every year we spend more money than we have. Every year they spend more money than they take in. How long can that go on for? How long can you build on that pyramid scheme? The future seems to be infinite. But you can't push off debts infinitely. It's like patience. There's no such thing as infinite patience. Because the point of patience is waiting for something. Not just being inert in a vacuum of nothingness, which is what, you got to be patient for some end thing. I was talking about before about the vengeance promised in like the book of Revelation and with the souls under the altar. There's vengeance promised. How long, O Lord, will holy and true, wilt thou not judge and avenge them that judge and avenge them that shed our blood upon the earth. Avenge us upon them that shed our blood on the earth. There is a vengeance promised, but God does not immediately bring it. That's patience. He doesn't immediately bring it. He waits for the appointed time. He brings it no sooner than he intended from the beginning. That's patient, being waiting for the plan to come to fruition. And patience does come to an end. Otherwise, it's really not patience. It's just apathy. There's a difference. There's a difference between I will do nothing and I will wait to do what I said I would do. Big difference. The poor and needy, from him that spoileth him. There's a lot of ways you can look at that. False witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. They rewarded me evil for good to the spoiling of my soul. Look, I already did the do good to them that hate me thing. I already did the do good to them that hate me thing, and they have rewarded me evil for good. I gave them good, they gave me evil. And they raised, and false witnesses rose up against me. False witnesses laid to my charge things that I didn't know about. I have no knowledge of I don't know what you're talking about. You ever have that moment where someone starts to, blah, 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 he this? I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. That's definitely happened to me about things I forgot I did. It's like someone reminding me of some boneheaded thing I did in the past. It's like, I don't remember that. I don't recall what you're talking about. But that does sound like me. Right? That's what false witnesses do. They come up with stuff. Why he did this and that, and this is what he said, and this is what you mean. I always feel like that when people, you feel like you're being falsely accused sometimes when you're getting strawmanned, which is not really a verb. But as I've explained, some people say I remember someone saying, their grandmother said, oh, it's, you play golf, you don't golf, because it's a noun, not a verb. You can turn almost every noun into a verb, or a verb into a noun. Like, I go for a run, I run. It's a fan, and you fan me. And I will play the game of golf, or I'll just golf. You know what I mean? Some people have like strange ideas. They get little odd ideas about the language, and they don't understand how it works. And why did I say all that? Why did I say that? I forgot what that. I thought there was a connection. Oh, whatever. It's not that important. But, it had to do with the meaning of words. Whatever. They lay to your charge things that you don't know about. You don't realize you've done anything. Because a lot of times, because if it's false, it's just made up. And that can be, imagine being framed up by powerful interests. Think about and I find myself going back to politics again, but whatever. You can think about the people who were arrested and charged with crimes in connection with the president, and it was mostly just a spying operation, and they manufactured crimes. There were no crimes; there were just crimes like, well, we were investigating some BS, and you said something that we don't think is 100% true. Or we disagree, or and you lied to us, you misled us. But again, in a huge, if someone asks you 1,000 questions, what are the chances you give the wrong answer? I mean, here's the thing: any person questioned can be tripped up in their words. Isn't that they kept doing that with Jesus? They wanted to catch him in his words. What do you think police do when they talk to you about something? They want to. If you're guilty, they're trying to find it out, and they're trying to get you to basically incriminate yourself. I mean, not entirely with hostile intent, you know what I mean? But the questions are meant to bring out certain things, right? And when it's, when they're being fair, it can be hard enough because even when you're being fair and you're against an authority and you're frightened, you know what I mean? It can be, it can be confusing and you don't remember things precisely, and you can give, information that's not 100% accurate because whose memory is 100% accurate, and then it becomes, they can say, well, you lied. you know, and now you've committed a crime, and nothing happened except basically someone just rifled through your memory and found a hole or a misfiled document, and they got you to speak it. So now you've lied to investigators. But imagine if they don't just, not just the idea of lying to people, the people get caught up in the process of the investigation, but imagine when powerful interests just frame you up. They framed up Jesus, He said that he would destroy the temple and build it again in 3 days. And that's a lie. He taught the people to disobey the law of Moses and to, disregard the traditions of our fathers. That's not true. False witnesses did rise up. They rewarded me evil for good to the spoiling of my soul. When he talks about his spoiling of his soul, what is it? How does my soul get spoiled? Again, it means like to take a spoil, like to despoil, to ransack and loot. My soul got looted, that kind of idea. Well, I would have to say that I think here soul is put for, again, this is a figure of speech where the soul is being spoken of, but the real target is the person's life. Because the soul is the essence of who you are. And if I talk about soul in this context of people spoiling my soul, I could say it like, okay, this action of falsely accusing hurt me internally and stripped my soul of joy and stripped my soul of hope and stripped my soul of, the expectation of good in my life. Because false witnesses rose against me and laid to my charge things that I didn't know, right? And I was being oppressed by powerful interests, and I tried to do good and be cooperative, but it just did even worse, and it just completely stripped my soul of all my, all the good things that reside within me. That's one way you could look at it, because he does go on to say, but as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned to my own bosom. One of the things we talk about, and it's funny because I was going a different direction with this, but I've actually completely abandoned that in pursuit of this idea. Because it is still a metaphor of some sort. And I was thinking metaphorically for the life, meaning like they actually spoiled my material goods when they were spoiling my soul. But this could be a purely spiritual, and certainly from the context, it feels like it. Because but as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into my own bosom. I have behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother. I bow down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother. So, in a sense, like he poured out his soul on their behalf. He bared his soul on their behalf. His prayers going forth to God. God knows I humbled myself with fasting on the behalf of this person. That is a bit thick, though. Doesn't it feel like that's a bit much? Wow, I fasted on behalf of somebody else? I only fasted on behalf of one other person once, and they were very close to me. But, you can see in this the idea of, when it talks about spoiling of the soul, it makes me think of, the idea of poor in spirit. Happy are the poor in spirit. Happy are those whose souls have been spoiled. Because sometimes, it talks about the soulish man. I mean, it's kind of like the selfish, the carnal man, actually, even though it says soulish. Because it's not the same as spiritual. Soulful is different. And biblically, it's used differently. The idea of being a soulish person or being more. I'm trying to put my finger on it, so please give me the benefit there. But the idea of being spoiled in the soul, sometimes we get in ourselves filled up with the things of the world, with food, right? And his prayer returning to his own bosom, sometimes wouldn't it be more beneficial to me to make it a public prayer? Because to me that sounds like it's like I prayed privately and it came back to me only into my own bosom. I guess to me that feels like I prayed and my prayer returned into my own bosom. I think that means no one heard my prayer but God and me. I mean, it wasn't a prayer for other people to hear. I was in my closet alone praying for them. It's one thing to get up in public and say, like, now my enemies really have a lot of problems, and, I feel bad for them because they're always coming against me. Well, let's pray for our enemies that hopefully they could see the light, in public. But returning to his own bosom seems to me like it's coming back to me and me alone. It's not, it's a prayer that I only have experienced. Yeah, I went to the Lord in my, because it's when we go publicly, there's a question of like, what are you going for? Because when someone prays alone, that's a sincere prayer. I don't know anybody that prayed alone that prayer could not be considered somewhat sincere, right? To one degree or the other. Even if they're like, oh God, I don't even know if you're there, but if you can hear me, I'm praying to you right now, right? If they're alone doing that with no observers, that's sincere. Even if it's skeptical, it's sincere. You know what I mean? Because you don't talk to God unless you're sincere. I mean, you don't talk to God when nobody else is around. Unless you kind of mean it. Because praying, that's why I've never been a fan of public prayer, because though I see the utility of it, and it's no shame or anything, but I always disliked it when people were kind of, like I'd be in the small groups with other teens and early 20-somethings in college, and they'd want us to pray, and they'd group us up in small groups of 3 or 4, and then we were supposed to talk to each other about our prayer needs and then pray about it together. And they would hold hands, we'd pray. But, some people are socially awkward, and that's like not, it's like, is that really for everybody? Are we all supposed to be good at that? It's like expecting everyone to be good at teaching publicly. It's just not necessarily everyone's skill set. Say, well, is that just because you can't do it? You don't like praying in front? No, I can do it, but I always, like I said, to me, it's more of a conscience issue. I always feel a little bit icky. Because and sometimes I've realized over time, though, that public prayer is for the benefit of the people who are listening. And Jesus himself said so. Lord, I pray not this just because I'm praying this not so that you could hear, because you know everything I'm praying already. But it's for them which are listening, that they may know. That's a powerful thing. Like, listen to me talk to God, everyone. It's fraught with dating that is something that, can be used in a highly manipulative fashion. Listen to me pray to God. Oh God, you know how humble I am. Yes. And these good people, you know how kind and giving they are. And though there is great need, Lord, I do not want you to lay on their heart a burden any greater than they can afford, whether it be $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, or $1,000 pledge, that their hearts would not be moved beyond that they are able to bear. And because thou knowest our great need, Lord, but lest it should overcharge the people, I ask in Jesus' name You know, I mean, like it's so, the manipulation of people through public prayer is dirty business. Dirty business, and it goes on. So when his enemies were sick, he put on my clothing was sackcloth. The wearing of sackcloth is a tradition that has to do with mourning. They would mourn in ashes and sackcloth. I remember I had a friend once ask me about what is sackcloth. I'm like, well, it's cloth that they used to make sack out of, So it means rough. It'd be like if I today was like, wearing a garbage bag. That's our equivalent, And it's probably better in some ways because at least it keeps the rain off. It might be quite sweaty though. But wearing garbage bags, is a sign of mourning. Maybe not garbage bags, but the bag the dog food comes in. Or a burlap sack. I remember looking into it. I was trying to figure out what kind of cloth they like. If I need to put on sackcloth, I got to do. If the point was to neglect the body. I'm not putting on my normal clothing, or I'm putting on clothing that says I'm not doing anything except praying and fasting. Like as far as like I am so distracted by this mournful, sad event or whatever it happens to be, or this thing I need, that I don't put on my normal clothes. I have no time for that. I just put on the sacking as my clothes. I take no care for it. It's a little different if you run down to Joann Fabric and buy up some burlap and stitch together a sack. It just doesn't have the same feel, does it? It's more of a show at that point, It could be a show. And sometimes fasting is in a show, but Jesus said to us that we should, when we fast, we should not appear to men to fast. We should anoint our head and wash our face. We should keep ourselves somewhat, meaning don't go too far with this. These traditions about fasting can go too far because it becomes like a show. Okay? But the message here is that I humbled my soul with fasting. I humbled your. How do you humble your soul with fasting? That's what I was talking about, the soulish person being in the Bible talking about carnality. In fact, I wish I could remember. I think, let me see here. Let's see if I can. I'll look up the phrase carnal man. And just, Where's carnal commandment? Yeah, I don't remember where I picked this up about the soulish. But anyways, soul being satisfied with eating and stuff is a phrase that comes up. And the idea is that by fasting, by neglecting the body, I am humbling my soul. I'm causing my soul to think it's not so important. Your life is not so important. Your hunger is not so important. Humble yourself and realize there are things that are more important than my hunger, my desire. And as Jesus said, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat and what you shall drink. Nor yet for your body, what you shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, the body than raiment? And life there is not the life more. I want to know what he said there, because I'm like trying to remember where I get this idea of soulish. I remember them talking about soulish creatures, but you can see in the context of this that what I'm saying, I'm not like making up something that's like off the wall. What was I going to look up? Oh, what Jesus said about... Wait, what? Now I've got stuck in my head like Isaiah 55, it says, "Come, ho, everyone that thirsteth, come ye to the waters. And ye that have no money, come, buy and eat. Ye come, buy wine and milk without money, without price. Wherefore should you spend money on that which is not bread, and your labor for that which satisfieth not?" Isaiah 55. "Hearken diligently unto me, and eat ye that which is good. Let your soul delight itself in fatness." Isaiah 55. Your soul delights in the fatness, and that's not just like spiritual; it's carnal. It says the whole soul is humbled through fasting, so it is made fat with food. Meaning, because when my body is fat, so is my soul. I'm getting a fat soul. It's hard to understand, but I mean, like that is the way it's spoken of. You think about your soul prospering, even as you prosper carnally. It's odd because there is a distinction between the soul and the carnal. There's a distinction, but they're intimately connected. You know what I mean? The carnal body is not equivalent to the soul, but they are intimately attached. I mean, the soul arises from the interaction of the spirit and the body. The body receiving the spirit, it becomes a living soul. And so we are living souls. And the soul is distinct from the body, yet connected to it completely. You know what I mean? Never heard of soul and spirit being sundered? And spirit and body. But I don't know if there's any reference in the Bible to the soul being separated from the body. I said, I don't know. I don't think there is. Not that I recall. But again, I've been surprised before. Sometimes when I think things seem right, I come to a conclusion like, like when I used to talk about God being invisible. It led me to thought that seemed right to me that only the Son of God was visible. Therefore, whenever you saw God, you actually were looking at the Son. But then it pointed out to me that there were places where the Son interacts with someone else who is supposed to be God. So who's that? Is that just the Son again, pretending to work with himself? And at that point, you might as well give in to the Jesus only type doctrine, like the United Pentecostal Church. Or is that the one? No, the Apostolic, whatever. Some branch of Pentecostalism teaches, where they basically deny the Son, saying that the Father is all there is, and he's just playing the Son. That there isn't a distinctive person that is the Son, as distinct from the Father. Anyway, so we can, evidence can be misused, misunderstood. That's all saying that. And with this issue with the soul, the way in which this is, it makes me think of like the spoiling of the soul. In a sense, he humbled his soul and they trampled it by returning evil for good. I behaved myself as though he'd been my friend or brother. I mourned, I fasted. When this person was in trouble or duress, I was their advocate to God. I prayed. I humbled my soul with fasting. I bowed down heavily. I felt very weighed down from, what's going on with this other person. Like someone mourning for their mother. Using that as an example. Because what could be more heart-wrenching than losing your mother? I don't know, because I have no feelings in that regard. Because of my situation. And it's always strange to me. It's something from growing up. But in my adversity, they rejoiced and gathered themselves together. Yea, the abjects gathered themselves together against me. I didn't realize that was a word. The abjects. Abjects? I mean, I've heard of abject poverty. I've just never heard it used that way. The abjects did gather themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me and ceased not. Well, there's two ways I got to look at this. One, I must absolutely know what that means in English. You know what I mean? What does abjects mean in English? So we are going to we'll use the evil source. I love the way it's like, hey, you're broadcasting. Everyone can see your search. All right. Let's see. I've been working in Unity. What was it? Abjects. Oh, there's a musical group called the Abjects, but I want the definition. Abject. I want the noun. Experienced or present to the maximum degree of a person or their behavior, completely without pride or dignity, self-abasing, obsequious, groveling, crawling, creeping, fawning. Interesting. Similar. What does it mean? See, they use it like an adjective all the time. It's always an adjective. The abject noun. It must be archaic. They only put it as an adjective here. Comes from Latin. Oh. Sure. Like you think about abdicate, right? Or abnormal. The prefix ab is a Latin one. Yes, it's kind of fallen out of use. In late Middle English, in the same as rejected, from Latin abjectus, past participle of abescere, reject, from ab, away, and jacere, to throw, or like ject, like eject, reject, abject. Abject means throw away. It basically means the same thing as reject. So what he said there was something like, in English they translated this, the rejects gathered themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me and cease not. Oh boy. Psh, I think that's funny. But what's it mean in Hebrew? The abjects. And there's, it means smitten or stricken, apparently, see. Let's see what apparently doesn't, it occurs once in the entire Old Testament, this word. Welcome to the only time this word is ever used. Strong's, from nakah, a smiter. Figuratively, a traducer. Abject. If it means, see Hebrew nakah, to smite. This is where we're going to say, I gave my back to the smiters. Is that one of the scriptures that's used in? No, apparently not. Well, then it seems more like smiters, and it's certainly not literally the same thing as the English word abject. It's interesting that the word literally means in Latin, reject. And I'm pretty sure that's how they use it here. You know what I mean? Abject. I guess as smiting, it's sort of like as being struck and cast to the side, that you might get to the idea of abject. Now we use it mostly like as a adjective of superlativeness, like abject poverty is the worst poverty possible. Yeah, I mean, and it has very little to do with the idea of rejection, like reject poverty. Like poverty's so bad, I reject it. I'm not sure how that works. Interesting word, huh? I didn't know we had that word. Well, I knew we had abject, but I didn't know it got used that way. And I think that is an archaic use, meaning, as you saw in the chart there, that word's usage over time. Back in the 1850s, they were using it a lot more. And the King James translation is even older than that. So they gather themselves against me. I didn't know they were gathering against me. It was like a secret plot. They teared me, they did tear me, they tore at me, they tried to rip at me, and these are metaphorical things for the ways people go after each other. There are different ways people can go after you. Financially, personally, interrelationally. They can attack your friends, they can attack your family, as far as like, speaking evil of you, trying to turn people against you, working together. It's like this cancel culture they got going on these days, where people say things other people don't like, and they all gather together to destroy their life. They find out where they work, they get them fired, if they say the wrong thing. If they make the wrong joke. With hypocritical mockers and feasts, they gnashed upon me with their teeth. Again, the idea of tearing. A lot of times wild beasts are characterized as tearing with their teeth, and here he brings in the teeth. So that's when I think about the idea of tearing going together with the idea of them gnashing upon me with their teeth. With hypocritical mockers and feasts, they were gathering. We're going to sit down to dinner with hypocritical mockers, and we're going to talk and eat. It was we talk about the destruction of the righteous. They gnash on them. They grind their teeth on them. We will chew them up and spit them out. Ha 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 ha. And as they attend these feasts, pretending to be important, upright members of the community, all the while planning an evil plot. Lord, how long wilt thou look on? Rescue my soul from their destructions, my darling from the lions. My darling, that's also recurred in like Psalm 22. Deliver my soul from the sword, my only one, my darling from the power of the dog. And I think this is probably the same word, my darling. The thing which is dear to me. It sounds a little weird, right, to us, my darling. And it means, it often refers to my soul. When it talks about when this word is used often of, well, let's just look it up here. Oops. There we go. My darling. My soul, and it says, my soul from their destruction, my darling from the lions. Darling there means pretty much the same thing as soul. It's being used as a synonym. Or it's being used for the same thing, for my life. It's a different way of referring to it. It means my only one. My one and only. The thing that is most dear is the implication. From your God properly united soul, S-O-L-E, as in only one. By implication, beloved, also lonely, in the feminine sense, the life, as not to be replaced, as being, you only got one life, can't be replaced. It is your only one. And that's the meaning of that word. So it is my only one, my soul, my one and only. I only got one life and they want to destroy it. That's depressing. We can be, but if the God is on our side, we pray to the Lord, God will be on our side, and in the end we will have the victory. Everyone's happy as long as the end is happy, right? Everyone wants to end up happy. The path we get there is sometimes, we'd rather have an easy path. But yet, if we end up in the right place, if the ending is good, I'm not saying the ends justify the means, but it's not a question of justice. We assume justice is done, but the justice done at the end does not justify everything that happened up to it, but it is the bringing of justice to it. I mean, it's not meant to say that it was okay that bad things happened. It's meant to be, this is the consequence of bad things. The judgment of God is the consequence of the bad thing, not the justification of it. It's not like it ends well, so everything's justified. God is already just. He's not justifying himself by doing things differently at the end. What he's doing by judging the wicked and rewarding the righteous. He's not doing justice there. Because justice would be we all get destroyed. Christ already was sacrificed so that we might live. There's a question of those to whom God brings justice and those to whom God brings mercy. But the wicked are often likened, to wild animals looking to tear. I mean, just like in Psalm 22, they talked about the horns of the bulls, the ravening, roaring lion, waiting to devour, waiting to destroy. And that's how sometimes it feels when powerful interests or groups of people are out to get you. It's like you're dealing with some sort of animal that you can't overpower. And we need God's help to intervene on our behalf so that we could live. And so that our life can go on peaceably. And so we're to deliver us from the destructions of the enemy. I will give thee thanks in the great congregation. I will praise thee among much people. Let not them that are mine enemies wrongfully rejoice over me, neither let them wink with the eye. Neither let them wink with the eye that hate me without a cause. There are those that hate me without a cause, and they're winking at each other. Oh, yes, David, we love you very much. Wink, wink, as we plan your demise. And they rejoice wrongfully. They're wrong. They're rejoicing, but they're wrong. They're wrong about it. They're wrong about me. False accusations are lies. And they think, and also they rejoice wrongfully. They think I'm done for. They think they've got me, just where they want me. But Lord, I know that the pit they digged for me, you're going to cause them to fall into it. And their evil doings will be their own undoing. For they speak not peace. And again, I will pray, give thanks to thee in the great congregation. I will praise thee among much people. I want to publicly acknowledge the good that God has done for me in front of a lot of people. Because there's someone, sometimes people, I'll tell you what, they're ashamed of God. Maybe they have some religion, or moderately so, or they believe, but they don't know how to talk about it. Or on some level, they know their friends will think it's tacky or something. Being willing to speak out in front of other people, your dedication to the Lord is, it's important. We should, with the mouth, confession is made unto salvation. No secret Christians here, For they speak not peace, but they devise deceitful matters against them that are quiet in the land. People who are just quietly going about their business, trying to live their lives. They devise deceitful matters. That's how I feel right now, honestly. In my life, I feel it's like I was just trying to earn a living. I was just trying to survive, scratch my way through, doing my Bible studies, and then they started interfering with my life. I was just quiet, you know? And now they got me writing songs against them and trying hard to disrupt things. You know? Tell me how much? Do I have that many more verses? Oh, I didn't realize it was going to go on that. Okay. I thought we were close to the end. Yeah, they opened their mouth wide against me and said, aha, aha, our eye hath seen. We see the weakness. We see his wound. We see our victory. We see his vulnerability. He's quiet in the land. You know, he's quiet, peaceable, just ready for us to swoop in and work our destruction. They open up their mouth. And they're grinding with their teeth, you know, all these pictures of this sort of wicked conspiracy. All right, we'll pick it up with verse 22 on Monday. Thanks for joining me this day. Look forward to being back again Monday to continue in the Psalms.
Thou art my portion, O Lord. I have said that I would keep thy words. I entreated thy favor with my whole heart. Be merciful unto me according to thy word. I thought on my ways and turned my feet to thy testimonies. I made haste and delayed not to keep thy commandments. The bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteousness.